On this episode of Insight, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools takes a stand for student safety.
Keeping them safe in school is one of the most important responsibilities that we have in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools.
Building a budget to support students and staff. What's at the top of the list? And getting ready for snow days. What's the plan when Old Man Winter comes to town? We ask the superintendent for insight. Hello, I'm Coretta Wilson, and welcome to Insight, the show that keeps you up to date on the issues and initiatives in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. Transparency and accountability, two words that mean a public school district should keep you informed and be held responsible to provide your student with a quality education. And on each episode of Insight, we do our part by getting our information straight from the superintendent of schools, Mr. Earnest Winston. Superintendent, good to see you again.
It's great to see you and be here with you.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
We have a lot of insight to get into some topics today. The graduation project is where we will begin. It is no longer required for seniors as a part of graduation. Why is that project going away?
So the project is no longer required for students to earn a diploma. However, there are some very important components of that project that we are retaining as part of students' regular classwork, and that includes the research component, the oral presentation. So we think those are very important skills that are good for students to have, and so we're going to maintain those components but embed aspects of that project as part of regular classwork.
We did have a chance to speak to the Assistant Superintendent of High School Equity, Condra Radley, and here's what she had to say about that project.
Okay.
Although the graduation project has been eliminated, we're still required to adhere to content standards, which basically says that we will develop student literacy skills K through 12th grade. So as a result, students will still have opportunities to develop research papers that will now count in their core content classes as opposed to a separate paper and presentation as a standalone graduation project.
And of course, those changes will go into effect immediately.
That is correct.
Okay, so seniors will still have a number of projects to do within their content area, but will not be expected to go above and beyond in completing that particular project.
Exactly. So it's no longer required as part of the diploma, and we have begun to communicate that information to our families. Mm-hmm. It is a part of our website, but we're also using other tools that we have at our disposal to communicate to our families.
And of course, students may say, oh, we don't have to do the graduation project, we're getting off the hook. And of course, they're not getting off the hook because there's still much work to do. What's been some of the reaction from some of the students perhaps that you've talked to, and some of the parents with knowing that the project is not going to be there? But of course, those students who've worked so diligently on that project will still have an opportunity to share that experience.
Absolutely. I have heard positive feedback about the changes, particularly from many of our students that I've engaged with. But I think people want to know what expectations are, and so with the changes that the school board made recently around the graduation project, we were able to share with families what the expectations are.
Okay, and I'm sure that will be a conversation for seniors as they prepare for graduation.
Yes.
Let's talk about inclement weather. Of course, there's always that chance that Mother Nature will get involved and have you cancel some days and such, but tell us, how will you decide when schools will close? And in particular, will sections of CMS shut down, or areas of CMS shut down?
That is one of the most challenging decisions.
That's the hardest part of your job, isn't it?
Well, it is. It's a difficult decision because you have to weigh so many factors. Right. And it is not a decision that we make in isolation. We speak with our partners at the city, the county, and various state agencies to help gather information in order to be able to make that decision. What I will say is that ultimately we err on the side of caution because ultimately our goal is to make sure that we're keeping our students and our staff safe. And so safety is a top priority at CMS. And while it's a difficult decision, it's a decision that we make with safety in mind.
And of course, many agencies are involved. It's not just you looking out of the window and seeing something and deciding one way or another. You have many agencies that are helping you decide.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot of collaboration as part of this decision. Our staff members are on the roads early in the morning when there is severe weather, and they're checking the road for conditions. We're talking to many people, you know, I mean, it's a collaborative process, but it's a well thought out process.
Certainly, certainly. Moving on to money and of course the budget. The state lawmakers haven't decided one way or another on a budget as of yet, but that does not mean that you are not hard at work trying to make sure we do have a budget in place for 2021 school year. A long process, and you're hoping to get a fair budget. Where do you stand right now? What's that process all about, and what is happening as we give our viewers some insight into that?
You're absolutely correct. So as we work on the budget for next school year and await the finalization of the current school year's budget, because that has not been finalized at the state level, but we do have to plan for next year. And so we have begun that process as a staff. Ultimately, as we move deeper into the budget planning phase for next year, we will seek feedback from members of our community, from our families, from our staff members, and so they'll have an opportunity to provide input as part of that process.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, we get about 60% of our funding from the state, 30% from the county, and 10% federal. With that money not being present from the state, how does that impact CMS?
What we do is we operate under a continuing budget resolution, which essentially means that we're essentially using the funds from the previous year. And so no increase in funds have been received by CMS, so we have not been able to, we requested increased funding from our partners, but we're operating at the same funding levels as we did last year.
Of course, CMS redirects some of its funding to the growing number of charter schools. Update us on that particular situation with more charter schools being out there.
Well, so this is a very competitive education landscape, and so families have multiple choices, you know, where they want to send their kids. And I believe in school choice. I believe that families should have options. I also believe very strongly that Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools is a strong and viable options for all families. And so we want families to choose Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, but it's good for the market for families to have choice.
And this, of course, being your first year, first few months as a superintendent, and you're facing issues with the budget from the state, of course. How difficult is that for you to handle, and what steps are you taking to make sure that everyone stays pretty upbeat and that you're advocating for CMS?
Well, there have been some challenges along the way, but by and large, I am enjoying the opportunities that present themselves. I enjoy working alongside a very strong team in CMS, and we've got some amazing things going on in our school district. A lot of great programs. We've got some very bright students, engaged families, and again, we've got a strong Board of Education, and this work is done in collaboration. So one entity is not more important than the other. We work very closely together.
A lot of work ahead.
Yes.
Two more things that we want to talk about, being that we want to be transparent. Of course, we hold everyone accountable. One of those being the website. Communications, of course, very important these days. Social media, very important to our students and to our families and our communities. The CMS website was placed out there, a new website for everyone to see and behold. But now we're hearing that there are some revisions that are being made. Why is that happening, and how much money have we spent on this project?
So we heard from our constituents that some of the things that they were accustomed to finding on the website no longer existed. It was a difficult experience. And so I think what's important is that we listened. We listened to our families, our staff members, our students about some of the things that were important to them. And so we made some shifts in our website platform. And so I think what's important is that we're going to look for a longer term solution. But in the interim, we made some adjustments to our website in response to the feedback that we have received, because we want people who use our website to have a pleasant experience. And so it was toward a nod, to helping folks find the information that they need and that they've been accustomed to finding. So that's important.
Those habits are hard to break.
It is.
And of course, some security issues that we ran into. Can you speak to that as well?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to address that. We recently had a media briefing, my first media briefing of this year, where we talked about some expectations that we have around some security measures.
In high schools or?
In our high schools.
In our high schools.
And so we're working with a vendor that we have contracted with to make some security upgrades. And I will say that we are very strong on security. This project would add an additional layer of security. But there were some things that have not gone quite to our satisfaction in terms of how the system is operating and functioning at this point. And so we were very candid with the vendor that we expect to see changes and improvement to the system. And we gave the vendor 30 days until February the 10th to ensure that those changes occur.
So of course we're keeping our students safe.
Absolutely.
Definitely. But when we come back, a new year brings new leadership to the Board of Education. CMS's new board chair joins us in the studio to discuss what's next in CMS.
There being a unanimous 9-0 votes for Elyse Dashew, the voting is now closed, and I declare that Miss Elyse Dashew has been elected chair of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education. Congratulations.
Well, that was the scene recently when CMS elected a new chairperson for the first time in 7 years. Now, the gavel and leadership is in the hands of Elyse Dashew, an at-large board member and former vice chairperson, and she is joining us now. Welcome, welcome to Insight. Glad to see you. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, of course, chairperson is a very, very big job, one that you, of course, would not take lightly, one that you've stepped into. Tell us a little bit about your journey to getting here.
Well, I've been vice chair for 3 years in a leadership team with Mary McRae, who of course was our chair for 7 years. So she really knew what she was doing, and I watched and learned a lot from her. I've kind of stand on her shoulders. Of course, I've got my own leadership style and my own personality. But as far as even serving on the school board or being involved in as an elected official, that's nothing. If you'd asked me when I was a kid or in college, what are you going to be when you grow up? I never would have dreamed of that. But it started as I was a really busy working mom and had a crisis at my kids' school, and I sort of dove in and tried to help resolve the crisis and started to pay attention to who's on the school board and who pushes the levers at CMS and how do we resolve this constructively. And one thing led to another, and my network got bigger, and I met more incredible parent advocates across the county. And
what's your desire to serve? This is a very large school district. What's your desire to serve so many people, so many children?
Well, I feel like I found my path. This is what I was meant to do, and I just feel so lucky to be able to do it. So to be able to make an impact in the lives of 150,000 children and their families. It's such a privilege and such an awesome responsibility. I feel like we are, with the size of our district, we have the eyes of the nation watching us. And when we get something right, it has a ripple effect, not just in CMS, but across the country, because people copy what we do. And at the same time, we're open-minded and innovative enough that if someone has a good idea and you try it out and it works, you have a chance to try out new ideas. So it's a cool opportunity.
What will be some of the goals that you'll be working on? Have you set any priorities? What is it that our community can expect from your leadership and your leadership style?
So my leadership style is very inclusive, very collaborative. This job is way too big to do alone, so I think we have a really strong team of board members, and I really crave insights and perspectives from lots of different angles, and so we've got that on the board and we've got that in the community, so I want to pull all that together in supporting our schools.
What about equity, the budget, construction? Are those some of the goals that you have in mind, and how will you reach those goals?
So yeah, we have done started some really important initiatives just in the last couple of years that I feel like we need steady forward progress on. So we passed a new equity policy last year, which was a huge amount of work, and a Community Equity Committee will soon be convening. By the time this airs, they may have already met.
What's going to be the purpose for that?
That is, so we have gaps in opportunity in our community, and those gaps show up in our schools. We have, and we as a board believe that every child deserves to have the resources that they need to make them successful. And so this is a way to identify where kids are not getting what they need or where they are getting what they need, and then to bring in the community to help identify the gaps and the solutions, and then be ambassadors for what is working.
You mentioned those gaps. The budget, of course, has something to do with filling those gaps. How will you pursue a budget, or what role will the budget play in equity?
Well, absolutely. You have to, we do not have our own taxing authority here in CMS, so we have to work with our funding partners in the county and the state and the federal level. And then we have to be very, very wise in how we spend those dollars and stretch those dollars as far as we can. And so it's very important as we develop our budget that it be aligned with our strategic plan and with our equity initiatives.
Under your leadership, of course, you'll be here for a while. What do you think will be your legacy? What do you hope will be your legacy once you do leave this post?
I hope that we build upon the community respect for our school system and for our teachers and for our students and what they're capable of. I want more people to know the good news and to support the good work that's happening in our schools. And bottom line is I want our students to be learning more, achieving more, and those gaps to close.
Okay, well, you have a very big job ahead of you, and we're glad that you are leading us. And definitely all the best.
All right,
Thank you for your insight.
Look forward to the next time.
Appreciate it. We will have more insight coming up from the superintendent right after this short break.
Let us model for the community how to put children above politics. Let us do everything in our power to support our teachers, because the greatest driver of equity in our schools is for every student to have a talented and effective and loving teacher.
Welcome back to Insight. When you provide an education to all children, that education could come in a variety of ways. Insight producer Joel Blackwelder visited East Mecklenburg High School to discover how lessons in the classroom become the lessons of life for several of our students.
East Mecklenburg High School recently held an open house that showcased their new simulated living space classroom. This learning lab is helping EC students focus on life skills that will prepare them for life after high school.
I got this room.
We will have a cooking station at the kitchen area, that's one.
And what this space is allowing us to do is actually hands-on. It's one thing to teach safety in the kitchen when I'm watching a video, or we can actually go into the kitchen and learn.
I make a pretty good steak.
Students on the Extension Diploma track enter high school at age 14 and can remain until age 22. Students can practice making beds, washing and folding laundry, cooking, and food safety.
Voting is kind of easy, sometimes it's hard.
The Real Life Lab was 2 years in the making and is a great opportunity for students at East.
It's a wonderful school. I have lots of friends, and I'm ready to get out in the world, though. Hold a job and maybe save some money for an apartment.
Students are encouraged to gain related experience at companies and organizations in the neighborhood. One scenario has Extension students washing athletic uniforms for the East Mecklenburg High School Athletic Department. Customer service and record-keeping skills provide additional experience for these students. They're determined to face the future and live out their dreams.
I want to be a police officer.
I want to be a fireman.
I want to be in the military.
What an excellent opportunity for our students to gain those living skills.
I absolutely agree with you. I believe that it is our job to prepare students not only for the current situation, schooling, but it's also important that we prepare students for what they will face and encounter outside of school, whether they choose to go into the military, higher education, or into a career. We want to make sure that they have the skill sets and the experience so that they can be successful long term. And I think this program, this new initiative at East Meck, is a nod to helping students achieve that.
Yeah, definitely those living and leadership skills combined. Well, time for a shout out to our talented student athletes. Congratulations to the Cougars of Vance High School, the 4AA football state champions. What a season for these young men, losing in the final seconds of the Champions game in 2018, but making it all the way back and winning it all in 2019. What do you think about those Vance Cougars?
I am extremely excited for our wonderful student athletes, as well as their coaches and administrators at Vance High School. I began my career in CMS as a Cougar at Vance High School teaching English, and we had an opportunity to recognize the entire football team and the coaches at the school board meeting last night. And so it was a wonderful opportunity to recognize a great achievement.
Congratulations to them. And before we let you go, a reminder though that the Census 2020 is coming, and those census numbers mean a lot to the public school district.
Absolutely. We encourage all of our families, all of the members of this community to participate in the census process. It comes around every 10 years, but the reason why it is so important is because much of the federal funding that CMS receives is based off of the participation of members in our community. And so I would strongly encourage everyone to be involved in that process.
Okay, and we will get a chance probably to remind them again.
Yes.
Thank you so much for all this insight.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks so much for joining us. We hope you learned something that will help you become an informed parent, an energized employee, or an engaged community member. Your support is important to the success of CMS. We'll see you next time for more insight.
Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education, so help me God. Let us remember that we are a team and we are a family.